Did you know there have been cryptids that have turned out to be real? You probably heard the word cryptid, or at least tales of horrifying unknown creatures scientists can't explain once in your life. Some of the more popular ones in North America at least are creatures like Bigfoot and the Mothman. There are also so many other ones that other cultures have mentioned, like the Yeti, El Chupacabra, the Jersey Devil and the Loch Ness Monster, Krakens, and ancient sea serpents. They're all terrifying in their own right. Cryptids are basically described as a creature that science refused to acknowledge because their entire existence is based only on eyewitness accounts and folklore passed from generation to generation of people who saw something horrifying they couldn't explain. For the most part, science is right to question whether these animals really exist, most of the time. But scattered throughout history, there have been times where those eyewitness accounts of these monsters turned out to be completely real. Hey, I'm Fossil Fruit, and today we're going over 12 times cryptids were proven to exist. The Jersey Devil has been talked about and seen in New Jersey for longer than New Jersey has even been a state. The first documented sighting was in 1909, when residents across multiple towns like Trenton and Woodbury all reported seeing a giant, massive winged monster flying through the night and making a screaming sound. It then proceeded to terrify witnesses over several days, who all described it with a horse-like head, enormous wings, and a long spaded tail, all paired with a horrifying shriek of death. It scared people so badly that they began locking their doors and schools literally closed down. The even more horrifying bit is that the sightings weren't new. Native Americans centuries before 1909 also described the same thing. There were a series of different origin stories people also came up with for the monster. The most famous one involves a woman known as Mother Leeds, who cursed her 13th unwanted child during pregnancy, which, if we pause for a second, is an insane number of children to have. She was literally spawn camping the kid with the curse. According to the legend, the child was born normally and then transformed into a winged horned monster and fled into the forest across the New Jersey coast. Some researchers proposed the idea that the sightings were large birds or sandhill cranes that people mistook for the monsters. Other wild theories suggest the New Jersey Devil was some kind of surviving creature from the Cretaceous period. The most plausible answer is that what people were seeing was probably the hammerhead bat. The hammerhead bat is found in lowland forests, mangroves, and swamps. The bat itself is classified as a megabat, meaning it's very large, as you can decipher from the name. Male bats have a very big head that is just horrifying to look at. Their heads even look similar to the horse description many legends told. During mating season 2, the males make a loud honking sound that can be heard from really far away. Somehow hammerhead bats were placed in the New Jersey forest, which led to people spreading rumors of the cryptic Jersey Devil, giving an explanation to centuries of people being terrified by a giant flying winged creature. Before anyone gave this creature a name, people were having encounters with something in the forests of West Africa and were terrified by what they saw. The Greek explorer Hanno the Navigator described seeing enormous hair-covered creatures when he traveled across the African coast in the 15th century BC. His interpreters at the time called them gorillae. While modern scientists believe Hanno was describing chimpanzees or baboons, the name stuck. In 1625, an English explorer named Andrew Battelle described seeing human-like monsters that would visit his campfire every morning after he left while he was in Angola. He said he noticed these monsters would stay by the fire to get warm and then return to the forest, but they never figured out how to add more wood to the fire. Gorillas remained legend until April 1847, when American physician and missionary Thomas Savage got sick while traveling in West Africa. This forced him to stay at a colleague's home in Gabon. There, his host showed him a large skull of a monster. This monkey-like creature was a remarkable size to him, and Savage immediately realized it didn't belong to any known ape. Savage took 2 skulls with him and went back to the United States. There, he worked with Harvard anatomist Jeffries Wieman to figure out what new species it was. In 1847, the discovery was announced at the Boston Society of Natural History with the name troglodytes gorilla, known as gorilla. British paleontologist Richard Owen, to his horror, described the gorilla as the most portentous and diabolical character of humanity that an atrabilious poet ever conceived or a naturalist ever realized. What a terrifying way to describe a gorilla. The mountain gorilla, on the other hand, known as Gorilla beringii, continued to be a cryptid even after the western gorillas were confirmed to be real. The mountain gorilla was not yet identified by western science until 1902, when German Captain Robert von Beringa encountered one to his terror. The animal had struck fear into all the campfire visitors in Angola, and now that monster is known to be the largest primate ever discovered on Earth. Long before any scientists from the West ever set foot on the island of Komodo, the locals spoke of a monster living on the island, the giant lizard of Komodo, a horrifying cryptid. The stories consisted of a giant dragon creature that walked around the volcanic landscape. Some of the locals described an animal so powerful it could tear apart deer or wild pigs without even trying. The scariest part were these stories weren't vague. Instead, all the stories told by the people of Komodo matched a specific theme and had similar details. Despite the stories being consistent, for decades scientists dismissed the folklore as false and refused to believe a giant dragon-like creature could be alive today. The dismissals held until 1910, when Dutch colonial officer Lieutenant Stein van Hensbroek heard more reports of a walking land crocodile of an unusually large size and actually went to investigate. His investigation was successful as he came back with a photograph and skin. These were sent to Peter Owens, the director of zoological and botanical gardens in Boytunzer. Owens immediately recognized the animal as a new species and published the first formal scientific description in 1912. The creature wasn't a crocodile and was instead a monitor lizard that was extremely big and had been living on the island for around 1 million years. Explorer W. Douglas Burden was not satisfied with just the skin in a published paper. In 1926, he went on an expedition to the island himself. He then returned to New York City carrying 12 specimens, including literal live animals. He had brought back 2 live Komodo dragons, which were placed on display at the Bronx Zoo. People were stunned to see an animal that literally looked like a dinosaur walking around in a zoo. The spectacle was so insane at the time that it inspired filmmaker Marin C. Cooper to create the 1933 classic King Kong. Today, Komodo dragons are known to grow up to 3 meters in length and are among the most efficient predators on Earth. Their saliva carries a horrifying venom that prevents blood clotting, which lowers the blood pressure in its prey until it can induce shock. They can reproduce like normal, or the females can even produce offspring without a male. There are around 3,000 Komodo dragons remaining in the wild across a few islands in eastern Indonesia, and they are considered an endangered species. For a majority of human history, the giant squid has been a very prominent cryptid. The idea of sea serpents stretches back centuries, with fishermen talking about giant tentacle monsters coming up from the deep and swallowing ships. The giant squid, akin to this, ducks, was the answer to these tales. While specimens of the squid have been found on the shore dying or already dead, no squid has been found in its natural habitat, so the creature stayed a semi-legend for a period of time, until September 30th, 2004. Japanese researchers Tsunemi Kubadera of the National Science Museum in Tokyo and Kiyoshi Mori of the Ogasawara Whale Watching Association spent 2 years deploying bait lines almost 900 meters below the surface in the North Pacific. They based their line drops on the data from sperm whale hunting patterns, all to try to guess where giant squids would most likely be. On the 23rd attempt at 9:15 in the morning, the scientists witnessed something horrifying. An 8-meter-long squid attacked the bait line they had dropped, and the squid became entangled. For the next 4 hours, the animals attempted to free itself, allowing the researchers to take over 550 photographs of it. When the squid tore itself off, it also left something very valuable to researchers. Its 5.5-meter tentacle had ripped off, which allowed scientists to do DNA research on it. This proved the appendage belonged to Arthetius. The photographs changed the rumors forever, with many scientists before theorizing that the giant squid were mostly slow and passive creatures. The footage the scientists gathered showed the complete opposite with the way it attacked the bait, and Kubadera described the attack as a large snake enveloping and holding its prey. The way the squid wrapped its tentacles around the bait matched a python wrapping its body around the prey before attacking. In 2012, the first video footage of a live squid was captured in the wild near Chichijima in the North Pacific. This footage was filmed from a submersible that followed the animal all the way down to 900 meters. Giant squids are estimated to grow up to about 12 to 13 meters long, proving that they were real, more aggressive, and not just a cryptid that fishermen talk about on their journey out to sea. Not every cryptid comes from the 18th or 19th century with myths and culture surrounding it. In the 1970s in New Jersey, a community called Griggstown described a monster that had escaped and gone feral. The town of Griggstown sits along a canal in the quiet area without too much crazy wildlife. Over the next 3 years, tales began to come out from the community. People at night would see a dark, large shape moving in the fog near the canal path. Sometimes at dusk, people could hear movement down in the growth below. Despite people seeing it and hearing it, no one took any clear photographs. The story grew, and soon people believed a phantom or a ghost haunted the canal. The Griggstown Cow became a local urban legend and a common ghost story in the community, with no one able to find it or prove it really existed. Then, in 2002, a cow was found in a ditch near the canal. The cow was very old and had signs of a very long life. The cow sadly died shortly after being removed from the ditch. The ghost of the Griggstown Canal ended up being a 30-year-old feral cow that had been living in New Jersey Canal the whole time. It's kind of silly how an animal as cute as cuddly as a cow could terrify so many people for so long. The next cryptid is one of the strangest looking animals ever documented. In 1798, Captain John Hunter, the second governor of New South Wales, sent a pelt and sketch to European scientists of some kind of impossible duck beaver. The sketch he sent was deeply disturbing to the scientists who saw it. The animal depicted had the bill of a duck, the body of an otter, the tail of a beaver, and webbed feet. It also reportedly laid eggs. Scientists in 18th century Europe did not believe such an animal could exist, with zoologist Robert Knox saying it must have been a fraud and the work of some kind of Asian taxidermist, all to try to fool the scientists of the time. Robert Knox even made another scientist, George Shaw, cut up the pelt to try to find stitches inside it, which he wasn't able to find. Several years later, and after a series of multiple expeditions, the platypus was found to be real, being one of the most weirdly insane looking animals in the animal kingdom. It is one of the only two surviving groups of manateens. It is also part of the only group of mammals to lay eggs rather than giving birth. The males have a venomous spur on their hind legs that can send excruciating pain through their victim. The platypus also hunts entirely by electroreception, literally detecting the electric fields of muscle contractions in its prey through sensors in its bill. Its sweat glands also produce milk, so imagine how it smells. It's like someone made an animal from memory or went Frankenstein mode, combining whatever animal traits that came to their mind. The next cryptid is truly horrifying. When European explorers visited the dense forests of Central Africa during the 18th and 19th century, they kept hearing the same stories of a creature unlike anything they had seen before. The creature was described as almost like a unicorn. People explained it as part zebra, part donkey, part deer, part antelope, with stripes on his hind legs and a very, very long tongue. It soon got the nickname the African unicorn by Europeans because it sounded too insane to be true. The local African people who lived in the Utori forest with the animal had known it was real, but that was not enough to prove it to science. The Okapi is a very difficult animal to find. It has the ability to move through dense undergrowth completely silently. Its striped pattern on its back hind legs also break up its outline, giving it a camouflage effect in the forest light. These two facts made it a cryptid that existed for a very long time, only being known to the millions of people in Central Africa and not to science. In 1901, Sir Harry Johnson took it upon himself to track down a skeleton and a skin of the animal and sent it to the British Museum. There, scientists classified it as an entirely new species. After genetic testing was done, they found the Okapi's closest living relative was exclusively within the giraffe family. The African unicorn turned out to be real, and it had 2 horns. The next cryptid lives in the deep depths of the ocean. For centuries, sailors consistently described giant creatures coming out of the ocean, calling these terrifying monsters sea serpents. Some of these creatures were said to be big enough to completely eat a ship and unlike anything that was seen in the water close to shore. The accounts were written by all kinds of different cultures, from Norwegian folklore to European myths, and even in Texas newspapers. The horrifying part is that all these stories had consistent details across them, meaning these monsters could have more validity than just another crazy sea story sailors tell. All the descriptions talked about the monster having an eel-like body, a distinct head, and a very weird movement. German scientist Ludwig Dorlin discovered the frilled shark in late 19th century, but all of his findings were lost in time. Later, American zoologist Samuel Garman documented and named the species in 1884. He described the creature as very likely to unsettle disbelief in what is popularly called the sea serpent. As you can see from the images, it's easy to understand where he got that idea from. The frilled shark has a horrifying set of teeth and gills with fleshy red tissue around its mouth, making it look like some kind of scary abomination. Its body is more similar to an eel than a shark, and it moves through the water slowly. Its jaw alone holds around 300 teeth in 25 rows, with each tooth shaped like a tiny spike facing inward that shreds up any animal it can get its mouth on. The frilled shark is also considered a living fossil. The shark's lineage goes back over 80 million years, meaning this animal has survived since the dinosaurs' mass extinction event and has not changed very much. The shark lives between 500 and 1500 meters underwater in the dark and cold ocean. All the sailors who found it in the 19th century were pretty close to describing it as a sea serpent because it genuinely looks like one. If you go into the mountains of western Papua, the Moni people of western Indonesia describe a cryptid called the man of the forest, or Bondegezou. The Moni have consistently described the cryptid with similar attributes across generations. They all describe the man of the forest as a small creature that's covered in black and white fur and shaped similar to a miniature man. They describe the monster as living primarily in trees and occasionally walking upright like humans on the ground. The local customs held that these beings were ancestral spirits, and so the locals treated these cryptids with respect. The neighboring group, known as the Dani, did not have the same beliefs and hunted them instead. Western science did not believe the accounts, as there were no animals at the time found that matched the description. In the 1980s, Tim Flannery, a senior researcher with the Australian Museum in Sydney, received a photograph from the Maoki mountain range showing a picture of an unknown creature. After seeing it, Flannery immediately recognized the animal as a tree kangaroo, but the specific species was completely unknown to him. In May 1994, he surveyed the region's wildlife at an elevation range of 10,000 to 11,000 feet. This survey was conducted entirely in the dense mossy forests of the southern slopes of the Mani homeland. There, the researchers discovered something that shocked them. The animal they found in the survey was very similar to the Mani description of the cryptid, with the animal being black and white with a star on its forehead, roughly 30 inches tall, and it weighed around 30 pounds. Flannery formally described the species as Dendrolagus embiso in 1995. The name embiso in the Mani language means forbidden animal, alluding to the culture of the Mani people to not hurt the animal. This means that the Mani's people's cryptid was real and not just an unsubstantiated paranormal belief. Sadly, the Bondegezou is currently a very endangered species. Next, we go to a monster you may have even encountered yourself despite it being a cryptid. In 1629, Dutch navigator Francisco Percelet encountered something very strange. While he was traveling along the Australian coast, he found a large cat-like animal with a pouch containing a smaller animal. He captured one, but it died during the voyage. European natural history researchers discussed the case out of curiosity, but most of them didn't believe it and chalked it up to just being a sailor's tale. and put it with all the other cryptids and fake stories of the time. It was not until June 1770 when Captain James Cook on the HMS Endeavour was forced ashore for repairs on the northern Australian coast. There on July 14, 1770, a crewman shot an unknown animal and brought it back to the camp for examination. On the ship was Joseph Banks, a naturalist who described the animal in his journal, saying strange things like how it jumped on its hind legs like a hare. The animal weighed over 40 pounds and had no resemblance to any known European species. Banks recorded the monster with the name Kangaroo. Even after the specimen was taken back to England, Europeans still did not believe it existed. In 1773, George Stubbs painted the creature based on the skin and rough sketches, and Europeans literally laughed at its possibility. To many people's surprise, the animal is real and not a cryptid, and a very popular animal that you can see in Australian outback today. If you're Australian, you'll have to comment below what you consider them. Do you think they're like an evil monster, or do you think of them as a cool animal? The next cryptid is in the Annamite Mountains, along the border between Vietnam and Laos. Local communities have described an animal that moves through the forest similar to a shadow. The animal had a long backwards curving horn that was unlike any other type of animal. The cryptid was only seen alone. No one was ever able to take a photo of it before it ran away. According to the modern science in the 20th century, the animal did not exist and was a local legend. In 1992, a joint survey team from the Vietnamese Ministry of Forestry and the WWF were working in the Vu Quang Nature Reserve in north-central Vietnam when they found something to their horror. They found a skull with long horns that didn't match any species known today. The researchers took the skull and named it the Saola, also known as Pseudo-Oryx engenhensis, and it was the first large mammal discovered anywhere in the world since 1936. The facts around the Saola only add to the strangeness of the animal. It's estimated to weigh between 180 to 220 pounds. The Saola has a very large scent gland on both sides of its face, and the actual use of the glands is still being studied. No scientist has ever seen a living Saola in the wild. Camera traps have photographed the creature somewhere between a few dozen and 100 times, and is considered critically endangered. This animal may go extinct before scientists even have a chance to figure out its unique attributes and why it lives the way it does. The Iriomote Cat cryptid is not just a normal house cat. When you look at it straight on, it just looks like a plain wild cat. You might even think it's just some kind of tabby that lives outside. On the Japanese island of Iriomote, local communities have maintained specific names, stories, and supernatural abilities for this animal, making it a cryptid. When Western scientists first heard of this cat, they dismissed the claims. They believed the cat to just be some kind of feral domestic cat the locals were getting mixed up with an actual unique wild cat and ignored it. The assumptions proved to be completely incorrect. The Iriomote cat is a distinct subspecies of wild cat that is only found on that specific island. It is genetically isolated lineage going back to the ancient times and has its own biological identity. The cat hunts a wide range of prey and acts completely different than even feral cats. The people of the Iriomote were correct in describing the cat as more spiritual and different from an ordinary cat. While it's not horrifying some of the other animals on this list, it is still considered a distinct cryptid that turned out to be true despite starting out as mainly folklore from the people of the island. Lastly, the most horrifying one of all, Bigfoot. No, I'm just kidding. He's still a myth and probably doesn't exist. But wouldn't that be crazy if he did? I mean, the Appalachian Mountains are a pretty big region. Maybe he could be running around somewhere deep in the forest at night. Probably not, but maybe. So those were all the cryptids that turned out to be real. While they may not be as terrifying as the folklore and stories make them out to be, it's still interesting to see how people talk about and explain animals they see, and how a little animal like a bat can turn into something as insane as a giant Jersey devil. Which one do you think turned out to be the most horrifying compared to the actual cryptid? Comment it below. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hype the video. I'm trying to hit 10k subscribers so everything helps. Later.